crafters, thanks for joining me here in the attic. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite beverage, and we'll get to crafting and memory keeping. Welcome to day 21 of Fairy Wings and Forgotten Things. There is only a few more days for you to catch up on this collaboration if you've been following it. All the links are down in my description box where you can head over to my Facebook group and get in on the chances to win prizes at the end of the month. Today's official fairy guide is Louise, so be sure to go over and check her out. Grab your official fairy token for the day and your official prompt. Professor Fernscribe today will be visiting the Wood Dryads, and she will be learning more about the fairy wand. So fairy wand is something magical. So let's grab some supplies and start crafting. I've been enjoying the look that the ink blending has added to the pages, so I think I want to do a little bit of that before I start laying my other embellishments down, and I want to use the gathered twigs. What I want to do now is add some trees in the background here. So I think I'm going to do some down at the bottom going across the page, and then some at the top going across the page, kind of like I did with the ribbon the other day. So I'm going to ink this up with the Rustic Wilderness. We have come to the last of the freebies today for this collaboration, so be sure to go over and grab everybody's freebies. Our designers have been super generous with all the freebies for this collaboration that go along with their kits. Hope y'all were able to grab some of the kits. That did not stamp super well, but that's okay because I'm going to be putting a cluster right here, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. I'm just going to see if I can lay this back in. Sometimes I can lay it back down and go back and get the last of that ink off. I think the idea that this page is kind of bulky and not flat is making it not stamp super well. But again, this is an experiment type book where I'm experimenting with new things, new products. I have been pleasantly surprised with how most of the things have turned out. And if everything doesn't turn out just perfectly, I am not fretting about that too terribly much. Line that up right there. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing down here. Maybe this one will stamp a little bit better. This paper's a little flatter. I'm not sure if it's the stamp or if it's the paper. Sometimes these stamps don't stamp the best, just depending on how they're made. I'm not even sure where I got this stamp from. I've had a lot of them in my stash for a long time that I don't use a whole lot. This one I had never used before, so it's okay. Because it's looking like, even if you can see, some of the ink is staying dark right there, so I don't think those are coming off. But let's see. That's a little better. I can go back and fill in with some paper elements to fill in some of these areas that don't stamp. I think this is just one of those stamps that's not going to give me a real clear image, but that's okay. Sometimes that happens. Alright, I'm going to set that stamp aside, and I'm going to clean my desk off where I got a little bit of the stamping over on the desk before it dries, and we'll come back. Let's see what we can add here to embellish this more so that these little imperfections don't show up as much. For the wood dryads, I wanted to incorporate different things about what I thought Professor Fernscribe would find in their area of the world. So I took some wood grain scrapbook paper and I embossed it with this 3D texture fade, and I've unfortunately have torn part of this, so I don't know the exact name here, but it is basically a wood grain look. It was a Tim Holtz product from Sizzix, and I just embossed that, and you can kind of see it a little bit better on the back, but it gave me some texture, and I want to just add some of the gathered twigs to the edge here, and also hit the top of this so it maybe pulls out that wood grain just a little bit more. I don't want to do too much. I don't want it all the same color. And I've also fussy cut out a lot of leaves from the same background page that I used. This was my kit. Forgot to tell y'all that in the beginning. This is part of my illustrated Anthology of Fairies kit, and this is the wood dryads from that and some of the background papers. So I've fussy cut out a lot of leaves that I'll be using to go along with the tree branch here, and I also wanted to add a little bit more texture, so I cut out some leaves out of this fabric that I dyed green. This was part of my wedding dress, and I took that apart and I've dyed it some colors to match the album I'll be working on for my daughter's wedding. And I had some extra scraps, so I cut some leaves out there, and I'm going to start building a few clusters. I'm going to build one here, and one down here. And I've got some other things that kind of go along with my story. I cut out some gems from Emily's Absinthe Fairy kit. Some more of those fabric leaves. I've got my wood dryad label and another piece of the embossed paper here. I'm going to go ahead and ink that up. And I want to go ahead and ink up my fussy cuts here. I've also got a little journal card that came from my kit that I'm going to use as a tuck spot for my information page. And I'm going to go ahead and ink up that information card while I've got this out. That way I can kind of start laying out my idea and kind of see how things are going to look. I think I want my information card here. I'm going to make that a tuck spot glued down there. I'm going to be building my cluster here. And see how that's going to cover up some of those imperfections with that inking. Just like that. And I can even come back with some marker or colored pencil. Let's see what I want to do here and fill in some of these spots. These are some markers I got off Amazon. Let me test out the colors here just a second and see if I can possibly, yeah, I think that's a pretty good match. Possibly just fill in some of these areas that my stamp didn't cover, just so that they're not completely void. And even the ones that it did do, I'm going to go back and add some of these little wisp here so it doesn't look like I just completely drew that in. And I want to add a little bit more of this going across the page, I think. So I'm just going to do some tearing here. Kind of like that. And I pull this all together. I'm going to ink that up. And I think I'm going to go ahead and start gluing this side down. I did notice as I've been working on these pages, I've been storing them in an iris box, 12 by 12, actually I guess it's 14 by 14, iris box, until I put the book back together. And I have noticed that due to some of the very large 3D elements I did at the beginning, I think, this book is starting to get very chunky. I'm hoping that it will all work out and I can make it all back in the journal when I get all the pages finished. But it is going to be a thick book and possibly an alligator mouth, but I'm okay with that. Alligator mouth books don't bother me a whole lot. Let me know in the comments if y'all like that look, or if you totally try to get away from that when you're creating your journals. Some people I know really have a hard time when they think about the alligator type look in those journals. They really don't like that. It doesn't bother me a whole lot. Okay, I think I'm going to put that right there, but first thing I want to do is glue down my leaves. So I'm going to use a little bit of Fabri-Tac on the backs of these leaves. Kind of tuck those under the gems there, just where it looks like they're coming out, kind of sprouting out from those gems. And while I've got this Fabri-Tac out, I'm just going to go ahead and use it on the back of this gem. You can use glue of choice. When I finish up my Fabri-Tac, I may switch over completely and see how just using the Aleene's tacky glue works with fabric for a little bit and see how that does. I don't particularly care for the odor that Fabri-Tac has, and I also don't like having this happen when I do everything to try to prevent that. Again, it is kind of all or nothing with Fabri-Tac. It is either clogged up or erupting like a volcano. And that makes me a little crazy. I feel like it's wasteful. Alright, let's see what else I want to do here. Okay, I don't mind that now. I'm going to come back, I think, with a few more little areas of marker to just kind of fill in a little bit of background here. Okay, that's not too bad. I'm okay with that. I'm going to go ahead and glue down my journal card here for this tuck spot. I will say the hardest thing about this collaboration has been trying to do different ideas each day. I know a lot of times when we're doing our journals, we kind of do some repeating of styles, and I've tried to come up with different things for each page and each world, and that's been the hardest thing, of coming up with 30 different things and it still fit along with the story. So for this one, I think I'm kind of done for the moment. So I'm going to set that aside so I can pull this one over and work on it more on its own. I'm going to end up putting this up here. And this is where I was talking about building those clusters and the idea that the imperfections didn't bother me a whole lot, because maybe I wouldn't see them so much. And I think I'm going to carry on with, before I glue that down, I am going to go ahead, since I did that over there, I'm going to do it over here too, just so that it all kind of blends together. And I may even do a little bit of sponging with that ink. I thought about that just now, because I've got my sponge over here that I could still add some texture to that. But that's kind of why I like to do the journals. These journals are handmade. They're not supposed to look perfect like they came straight from a factory. So these little imperfections don't bother me a whole lot. I think it adds character to your journals when they're not completely perfect. So anytime you have something that you think didn't turn out quite the way you wanted it to, don't stress about it. Come back in and work on it a little bit, and in the end, think of it as character and that your journal has personality. And it's unique. It's not like everybody else's. So I'm going to take my sponge here, and I'm just going to do a little bit of stamping with that and see if I can get a uniformed look between these pages. Just filling in some of those holes. Okay, I am pretty happy with that. Let me grab this one and do the same thing down here. Okay, let's finish doing the clusters on that other page. So let's see what I want to do here. I want to build a tree right here to where it's not like you see the whole tree, but you just see kind of branches and the trunk of it. So kind of like that there. I'm gonna add in some of these fabric leaves, maybe even pulling this one down this way, kind of like that. Let's see. this one here. Okay, I like that look, so I'm going to go ahead while this is like this and glue in the paper leaves before I add the fabric ones and glue the trunk down. In this particular journal, the way I've been creating it, it's a little different from some of the other journals that I have done because I am trying to work with the story here that goes along with Professor Fernscribe's adventure. But that's been both challenging and a lot of fun. A lot of times I would just sit down and start putting pages together and not really have a goal other than what looks good on the paper. But this one, because it did have a story to it, it's a little bit more thought into the way the pages are for me. I like that. Now I want to add the leaves, and then I'll glue the branch down. For this one, I'm going to actually go over the tree a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and glue that down. I want that leaf to go right over the top of that. Okay. Now let's glue this down. Again, you see how that's just kind of erupted? It could possibly be from where I kept clipping the nozzle so it wouldn't dry up in the tip, but it is a pain. Okay, I'm going to get that top back on, so hopefully I don't lose a lot more glue. Okay. And now let's work on this cluster right up here. I'll start with just gluing this down, building my cluster out. Go ahead and get this glued on and be finished with this Fabri-Tac for the day. Get my gemstone glued on. And when we get to the story, you'll kind of see where the gems are involved here. I'm going to grab my other page and do some final things, and then we'll be ready to do our information card for the day. So the last thing I want to do is add my magical element from my prompt and some gems. I've got these little gemstones that I want to add as just little highlight embellishments around my page. I'm going to do that with some glossy accents because I need the glossy accents anyway to add my magical element to my page. I'm going to grab my glossy accents and my little wax tool there. Okay. I just normally like to just put dabs of glossy accents wherever I think I want to use my little gems. I'm going to do 3 right there. And I want to add a couple down here. And I think that's it. So for my little magical embellishment, I have created a little magical fairy wand here that I'm going to glue right down here like it's part of the branch on the tree. So I'm going to add glossy accents to the back of that. It is metal, so I want to use the glossy accents. Find it sticks a little better. Then I want to just put it just like it is this particular branch of the tree. And I'll just let that dry. And I think that finishes out our page for day 21. Let's stamp our day 21. Information card really quick, and then we'll do our story for the day. Alright, let's see what Professor Fernscribe has to tell us today. Day 21, World of the Wood Dryads, the Fairy Wand. Environmental notes: vast primeval forest, dense canopy allowing shafts of green gold light, air rich with humus and resin, temperate but humid, soundscape alive with birds, leaves, and rhythmic creaks of trees. Cultural observation: the wood dryads manifest as tall, bark-skinned beings, hair trailing like vines, guardians symbolically bound to specific trees. Governance by councils convened at dawn, decisions sung rather than spoken. Artifact notes: the fairy wand is grown, not crafted. A living branch no longer than my forearm, smooth yet faintly pulsing with sap. A crystal bud crowns its tip. When held, the wand resonates with nearby vegetation, encouraging growth. Hypothesis: living tool of an arboreal command, extension of dryad will. Narrative encounter: within a ring of ancient oaks, the dryads encircled me, eyes glowing green. A branch bent low of its own accord. From it budded the wand and dropped warm into my hands. Touching the crystal, nearby vines coiled gently around my boots in greeting. Not a tool alone, but a pact with the forest. And so that ends day 21 as we start out our adventure for the last few days of this adventure quest. I hope you'll come back and join me for day 22 to see where our professor ends up tomorrow. So until I see y'all again here in the attic, y'all take care.